Hello, my name is Sonia Hudgens-Cox, and I have taught in Rutherford County for the past 18 years at both the elementary and the middle school level. I currently serve as a response to intervention and instruction coach in Rutherford County. I will be your guide to Tennessee's new assessment in Math and English Language Arts, TNReady. TNReady will begin in the 2015-2016 school year, replacing the old TCAP achievement and end-of-course exams in Math and English Language Arts. We are sharing this information in order to be transparent about the direction of the assessment and provide information that can support your planning for the coming year. As an introduction to Math and ELA portions of TNReady, this video will dive into each content area and cover: what is TNReady designed to assess? What types of items will students see on the test? What standards will be assessed on each part of the test? For Math, guidance on the calculator policy. And for ELA, guidance on what types of reading and writing passages and prompts students will see on the test. The goals for TNReady are that it will provide information about student readiness. That means TNReady will give us real and better information every year about whether students are on track to be ready for post-secondary materials and able to avoid any remediation. Anchor expectations about what students need to know and be able to do at every grade level. Provide actionable information for parents and educators to support student growth. More and better information will be provided to students, parents, and educators about performance on TNReady than we have had on TCAP and EOCs in the past. We will start with the basics about TNReady. First, TNReady will assess Tennessee's current state standards, not the previous Tennessee diploma standards. TNReady is designed to assess the standards we have been working to implement across the past 4 years. If the standards change over time, TNReady can be adjusted to reflect those changes. Second, TNReady will be designed by Tennesseans for Tennessee. We will initially use items from a bank that is used by other states, as we also develop additional items. However, every decision about this test will be made unique to Tennessee. Third, teachers will be involved in every decision about TNReady: item selection, scoring, and setting the cut scores. Fourth, TNReady will be administered in 2 parts. Part 1 will be given 2/3 of the way, and Part 2 will be given 90% of the way through the year or course. Finally, TNReady is designed to assess the skills students need to be ready for success after high school. It is designed to be an authentic assessment with questions that reflect practical, real-world situations and to mimic the skills students need for post-secondary success. So, with that frame in mind, let's dive first into the math test design of TNReady. The math portion of TNReady was designed with the following priorities in mind. The fastest growing sectors of our economy demand both strong technical and basic math skills. In the past, the structure of assessments has led to instruction that races through skills, especially in the early grades. The math portion of TNReady in grades 3 through 8 is designed to focus on fewer concepts. In high school, the structure of past assessments has treated skills as separate and not connected in a meaningful way. The high school courses will focus on strengthening coherence and assess topics in connected ways. TNReady supports alignment with the ACT. In many ways, it mimics the ACT item types. TNReady includes calculator permitted and calculator prohibited sections at every grade level. While calculators are critical tools and all students need to learn how to use calculators to navigate situations, there are critical standards students need to be able to demonstrate without the help of a calculator. At the heart of TNReady is the belief that math skills are fostered through great instruction and consistent practice. We know that all students can develop a strong command of the basic skills and foundational concepts while improving problem-solving and performance skills. In order to make the test more engaging and a more authentic assessment of what students really know and can do, there will be multiple item types. This will be a change as the test will no longer be just multiple choice. In math, TNReady will include 6 different types of math items, and we have shared a math item types overview document that includes examples of each. The first type is multiple choice questions. This type of multiple choice is more familiar to our students. However, the multiple choice questions on TNReady will ask students to delve deeper than previous tests. For Year 1, 60 to 75% of questions will be the traditional multiple choice format. The second type of item is multiple select. Multiple select items ask students to select multiple correct answers. Up to 10% of questions will come from this item type across both Part 1 and Part 2. The scoring of multiple select is worth either 1 or 2 points depending on the wording of the question. If students select some, but not all of the correct answers, they will not get partial credit for the question. In other situations, students may be eligible for partial credit. These questions are not meant to trick students. The question will explicitly ask them to select all of the correct answers or choose which two are correct. The third type is the graphic item. Overall, 10 to 25% of questions, with more in high school, will be graphic. The fourth type is equation response. You can expect to see equation questions on all grade levels. 10 to 15% of the question types will be equation types, and they will be on both Part 1 and Part 2. The fifth item type is the performance task. There will be one performance task in grades 3 through 8 on Part 1. It will be worth 10 to 15 points with partial credit available. You may remember the math tests that were on the Constructed Response Assessment, or CRAs. The TNReady math performance tasks will have some similarities but will not be identical. These performance tasks will include 4 to 5 questions. There will typically be one question that asks students to explain their reasoning. However, the explanation is less open-ended than CRAs. The final item type is technology-enhanced items. Technology-enhanced items including angles, bar graphs, drag and drop, classifications, partitioning, shading, pictographs, rays, selecting points and ranges, and shading and filling in component parts are usually worth 1 point. Occasionally they involve 2 parts, so in this case the problem can either be worth 1 or 2 points depending on the wording of the question. These items will be on both Part 1 and 2 with 5 to 15%. Now that we've talked about item types, let's discuss the blueprints. Just as blueprints for a building are the map for the construction process, blueprints for TNReady are the foundational documents for understanding the design of the test. So what do blueprints tell us? Each blueprint includes the range of the number of items for each part, the percentage for each part, the total number of items, and the percentage derived from each cluster. In particular, blueprints depict what standards will be assessed on Part 1 and Part 2. Blueprints for all grade levels are available at the website on your screen. In grades 3 through 8, the most important instructional shift is focus. Focus on fewer concepts while assessing those concepts in a range of ways to ensure depth of mastery. Let's take a look together at the Grade 5 Math Blueprint. On this slide, you can see a snapshot of the first page of the blueprint for Grade 5 Mathematics. And there's a similar table that is found on the first page of every mathematics blueprint. For math, the categories in the far left-hand column are the standard clusters. Going left to right, the next 2 columns show the ranges of items and score points in Part 1, and the next 2 columns show the ranges of items and score points in Part 2. There are 2 main categories in our current state standards for math. The first category is the major work. These are the key skills for mastery for that grade level. The second category is additional and supporting work. This table shows how the Grade 5 tests will be split between the two. Overall, 75 to 80% of the tests will be drawn from the major work of the grade. 20 to 25% will be drawn from the supporting work of the grade. As you can see, each blueprint lists the major work of the grade and the clusters that are part of that. Major work clusters are bolded. You may have noticed that there are more score points than items. This is because some items will be worth more than 1 point each. The table shows that Part 1 of TNReady will assess only the major work of the grade. Part 1 will be administered 2/3 of the way through the instructional period. You will notice that 100% of the content assessed on Part 1 is from the major work of the grade and that there are zeros under additional and supporting in Part 1 to reflect this. Additional and supporting standards will be assessed only in Part 2, but the major work will be assessed in both parts. We have just walked through Grade 5 together, but overall the format is very similar in Grades 3 through 8. What changes is that the major work of the grade goes down slightly as you go up the grade level, but it is still a major emphasis. The total number of items also increases slightly. In high school, the most important shift is coherence. TNReady is designed to assess topics in ways that make connections so that students are not simply learning a checklist of skills, but rather learning about mathematics and the relationships within mathematics. High school forms will be available for all 6 math courses across both traditional and integrated pathways, including Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Core Math 1, Core Math 2, and Core Math 3. Let's turn our attention to the calculator policy for math. The calculator policy for TNReady represents a change from our previous policies and is based on 2 central beliefs. Calculators are important tools for college and career readiness. Students must be able to demonstrate many skills without relying on calculators. With these beliefs in mind, at all grade levels and in all courses, TNReady will include both calculator-permitted and calculator-prohibited sections. Part 1 will allow calculators at all grade levels. Part 2 will have 2 subtests. One will allow the usage of a calculator, while the other will not. Items will be assigned to calculator or non-calculator use based on the design of that item and the standard being assessed. Students may use the online calculator or a handheld calculator. It will be the responsibility of the test administrator that the regulations about those handhelds are followed. On this slide, you can see the prohibited and permitted functions of calculators used on the math portion of TNReady. A student may use any permitted calculator at any grade level. A few examples of permitted functions include square root, pi, graphing capability, data entry, matrices, regression, trigonometric functions like sine, cosine, tangent, logarithm, and exponential functions. Students may use any 4-function scientific or graphing calculator, which does not include any of the prohibited functionalities. Calculator functionalities that are not allowed on TNReady include any calculator with computer algebra system capabilities, communication capability, QWERTY keyboard, cell phones, tablets, iPods, etc. The calculator functionalities not allowed on TNReady are consistent with all of our national assessments as well. It will be the responsibility of the test administrator that the regulations about those handhelds are followed. Now let's talk about the design of the TNReady English Language Arts or ELA test. The ELA portion of TNReady was designed with the following priorities in mind. Many of our students in Tennessee that go on to post-secondary institutions struggle with reading analysis and writing skills. We know that if you measure the text complexity of the types of things that students are reading in their freshman year of college with what they are reading in their senior year of high school, there is a gap of up to 4 years between the complexity of text. When students move on to post-secondary education, they must be prepared to read and analyze texts that are far more complex than the texts they are used to in K through 12. The segregation of reading and writing in our previous assessments has led to instructional isolation, when in reality what you do every day usually requires a combination of both reading and writing. TNReady focuses on authentic workplace and post-secondary skills, including a combination of reading and writing analysis, while also increasing the text complexity for each grade level from elementary through high school. TNReady features multiple item types in ELA. This will make the test more engaging and a more authentic assessment of what students really know and can do. In ELA, there are 5 item types. The first item type is the writing task. The writing task will be based on 1 or more passages, and it will make up 25 to 30% of the total score points. The task is a question to which students respond by writing an essay, explanation, or report using evidence from the passage. Students type their responses in the space provided. The writing test can be opinion, persuasive, expository, or narrative, and we will talk about this in more detail later in this video. The second type is technology enhanced. Technology enhanced items require students to perform an interaction to respond to the question. These items are 20 to 30% of the test and can have 1 to 3 correct answers worth 1 to 2 points each depending on the nature of the item. Partial credit may also be available. The third ELA item type is multiple choice. Again, multiple choice is most familiar to our students. However, the multiple choice questions on TNReady will ask students to think more critically than previous tests. About 25% of questions in ELA will be the traditional multiple choice format. The fourth type is multiple select. Multiple select items have multiple correct answers, and 5 to 10% of questions will come from this item type across both Part 1 and Part 2. The scoring of multiple select is worth either 1 or 2 points depending on the wording of the question. If they select some of the correct answers but not all, students will not get partial points for the question. In other situations, students may be eligible for partial credit. The final type is evidence-based selected response. These questions are two-part multiple choice questions that will comprise 10 to 20% of the test on the ELA portion of TNReady. Let's take a look together at the Grade 5 ELA blueprint. As a reminder, all grades are available on the website on this slide. On this slide, you can see the first table in the Grade 5 ELA blueprint. There's a similar table that is the first page of every ELA blueprint. The table also shows how the test is divided up into parts by domain. Reading and writing are the two main categories in ELA. As the table shows, the test at Grade 5 will be about 39% writing, including conventions, and about 61% will come from reading. Let's take a moment to talk more specifically about Part 1 of the ELA test. Part 1 consists of 2 writing prompts, 1 operational and 1 field test. Students will not know which is which, and students' scores will only reflect their work on the operational writing task. We must field test every year to ensure that we have enough items to develop future tests. Also, please note that students may take the 2 writing tasks on different days. Students' responses to the operational prompt will be scored with the same Tennessee-created rubrics that have been used to score our current writing assessment for the past 3 years. What you will notice as you review the blueprint is that the focus and organization and development sections of the rubric will count as 8 points each. The other 2 sections of the rubric, language and style and conventions, will count 4 points each. This is designed to reflect the emphasis of the standards. One additional note, even though the writing tasks only directly assess the writing standards, the writing tasks require students to respond to passages, and this requires strong reading skills. As a result, reading standards are indirectly assessed on Part 1. Students may experience a variety of different writing types on Part 1, and we have shared an ELA writing types overview document that includes examples of each. Writing types that will be included in Part 1 of TNReady include opinion, argument, informative, explanatory, and narrative. Note that for Year 1, only opinion, argument, informative, and explanatory will appear on the operational writing prompt. Narrative writing tasks will be field tested and may appear on any grade in Year 2. The Part 2 administration of the ELA test will be administered at the end of the year or course. In Part 2, students will respond to questions that will focus primarily on reading analysis. No essays will be included on Part 2, and all items will be machine scored. While the focus is significantly on reading, Part 2 also contains some items assessing editing. A student's reporting category score for conventions will combine the score from the rubric in Part 1 with the score for the items in Part 2 for a total of 9 score points. Just as the standards emphasize both literary and informational texts, the range of score points for TNReady items based on literary passages is equal to the range of score points for items based on informational text. This is true for the elementary and middle school grades. In high school, the score points based on literary text versus informational text is about 1/3 to 2/3. In 5th grade, as shown in this table, The percentage of score points for literary passages and informational passages are each about 23 to 28% of the total test. The reading score points reflect the Tennessee Standard's emphasis on vocabulary, with about 9 to 12% of the total test focused on this domain. We have also shared the quantitative and qualitative measures that will be used to determine how passages will be selected both for the reading sections and for the writing section. Understanding the ELA portion of TNReady is about far more than just standards coverage. The test development process includes a passage review in which teachers will review what types of passages will be used. These teacher panels will analyze each passage on TNReady using the Text Complexity Worksheet. This is the same worksheet the department has shared in previous years with the current writing assessment. Remember, overall, TNReady is all about integrating reading and writing in English language arts, which is a top priority because we know that this will ultimately help our students achieve and succeed in our diverse and ever-changing world. We just walked through the test design of the math and ELA portions of TNReady. The test is designed to provide an actionable measure of post-secondary readiness. While transitioning to more rigorous assessments is hard work for both our students and us as teachers, we have seen with multiple examples that student performance does rise over time to meet our high expectations. One key is sufficient opportunity for students to practice using assessments to both teach and to assess. There are two types of practice tools that all districts and schools will have access to free of charge. One is the item sampler, and the second is the practice test. Both practice tools are designed to reflect the content and the format of TNReady. Item samplers, which will be released this May, will give each grade level 8 to 12 specific examples of the full range of item types. Teachers will have access to 25 to 40 additional sample items. In addition, schools and districts will have access to a practice test available during 3 windows across this upcoming school year. A practice version of Part 1 and Part 2 will be available. Students will have access to the same features on the item sampler and practice test that they will have on the TNReady operational assessment. This practice tools overview slide covers the intended purpose, release timeline, and other details about each practice tool. In conclusion, we have covered a lot of important information during this time together. What I hope that you take away from this is that what we have shared parallels the work we've been doing in Tennessee over the past several years, and that TNReady represents a step forward in better assessments that focus on the skills students need to be successful beyond graduation from high school. You have already done a great deal of work to prepare, and I am confident that with patience, teamwork, and great teaching every day, we can and will help students get ready for more than just an assessment, but for the authentic work we need for the workplace today. Thank you, and if you have any questions about this information or other instructional topics, please send them to tncore.questions@tn.gov.